there's any kind of magic in this world, it must be in the attempt of understanding someone, sharing something.
Alright lads, let's get into it. Welcome to day number... I really do not have a damn clue what it is right now. I think we're in about week 9 or 8 or maybe even 10. Strong emphasis on maybe, because really at this point I haven't a Scooby. I do know what day of the week it is, and I know that we are somewhere in May, but that's about it. But still, hey, it's a start, right? And speaking of starts, we should probably start this off by introducing who I am. I say we, I mean me. I should probably introduce who I am. That would be a good start, for sure. So, for those of you who don't know who I am, and I'm just gonna go out on a big old chonky limb and just assume that's most of you, I am Mal Foster, and like many other male Caucasian 30-something pseudo-reluctant hipsters, the way that I've decided to handle this crisis is to do this. Make a podcast in which I talk about anything and everything and nothing all at once, because apparently that's what I do. Or more to the point, it's what I did. You see, for this is not my first rodeo. Oh no, sir. This cowboy has mounted up on the microphone many times over the years, whether it is with other people, for other projects, working for different websites, or more recently, doing something by myself, for the most part, for myself. Now, to give a little bit of context, to give a little bit of clarity here for those of you who don't know, because there will be some of you that do, but for those of you who don't, I used to do a show called Ramble On. Now, this started way back in 2015. Yeah, it started off in 2015, basically as a travel podcast, as a companion piece to a huge life-changing chapter in my existence. See, back in 2015, I found myself at a place I'd never been before. I had gone through years of anxiety and depression, insomnia, and self-inflicted obesity. And after being given the prognosis of having type 2 diabetes, I decided to get the latter in check, put in some work, really grinded, hustled my ass off, lost basically myself, or at least half of myself, didn't lose all of myself. Spiritually and mentally speaking, I found myself, you could say, if you want to go down that route. But basically, I got myself in a much better physical place, and it also really helped me get to a much better mental place. So in 2015, having got myself right, I decided to embark on a huge challenge, something that would really test my social anxiety and my self-esteem. In 2015, having saved up a bunch of cash, I quit my job, and I decided to go traveling by myself. I went over to the USA for the very first time. I landed in New York, and I made my way through New Orleans, through Florida, through Texas, to California, and in particular, San Francisco. Now, for those of you who have been on this journey with me, for those of you who know this story, you know that it did not end very well at all in San Francisco. For those of you who don't know the story, the shortened version of it, the short and by no means sweet version of the story, is that I spent all of my money. That's right, I ended up with pretty much nothing. In fact, I had to borrow some money to get a ticket to come home. Yeah, not exactly my finest hour, but despite the crash course ending to this journey, the whole experience was incredible. It was, without any sense of overinflation, life-changing in so many ways. It not only opened up doorways to my future and my now present, but it also helped me conquer demons of my past. It really made me realize that I'm much stronger than I had ever given myself credit for, and that I can do something of a great magnitude if I really want it, if I put my mind to it, and I push myself to do it. As I said, when I started Ramble On, it was a travel log, it was a travel podcast, it was a companion piece for my journey through each city, through each state. And that's, at the time, what I thought it was just going to be, just contained as a travel podcast. But having done that, having allowed myself to do something I'd never done before, it really gave me an itch to push myself further, to try new things. And so, upon returning back home to England, granted with no money to my name, I wanted to keep this going. I wanted to keep the momentum of that feeling going. I wanted to experience a whole array of new things. I wanted to put myself outside my comfort zone more and just look at the world for the bigger picture that it is. And so, that's pretty much what Ramble On became. It became me trying different things, trying to push my social anxiety and trying to push myself as a person, as an individual, to do better, to know more, to experience more. And along the way, it kind of became a very personal audio journal, an archive of a lot of things that were going on, including, and especially so, really, my impending move to the US, my permanent move over here to the US, which is where I now reside. You see, back in 2016, I kept a promise that I made to myself the year before. When I crashed and burned in San Francisco, it was horrible. I felt like a failure. I felt like I had just took the whole bottom out of this wonderful experience. But after getting back home, getting myself sort of right, getting on the right track, I made a promise to myself that I would go back the following year and revisit San Francisco and actually take home good memories of that city for myself, rather than it just being the place where everything ended abruptly and was awful. I wanted to go back and actually experience the city and enjoy it and not just associate it with just sadness and wallowing and disappointment. So in the summer of 2016, that's exactly what I did. I went back to California, I went to San Francisco, I had a few days there and I righted my wrongs. I kept the promise I made to myself, and I finished what I started. I went on to Los Angeles, had an amazing time there. But as good as it was going back to California, going to Los Angeles, righting the wrongs of San Francisco, fulfilling the promise I made to myself, finishing what I started, as good as all that was, it kind of pales in comparison to what happens next. The biggest, most significant plot twist in my existence. That summer in 2016, when I went back to the US for the second time, I met for the second time the woman who is without question the love of my life, and who, for some reason, and you would probably have to ask her this because even now I still can't fathom out why she agreed to, but the woman who agreed to be my wife, with whom I now live with in the US. And Ramble On covered all of this. It covered the journey to that point. It covered the applications for me getting a fiancé visa, the medicals, the interviews, the gathering of documents, going to my father's grave for the very first time to gather his birth and death dates, which, yeah, that's a whole different story, maybe for another episode. But regardless, Ramble On was there through all of these life-changing ebbs and flows. And when I got here in January 2019, I had to ask myself a very big, important question. Do I want to keep doing this? Do I want to keep documenting what's happening? And granted, that kind of content would have probably been pretty interesting for some people, if not just for myself to listen back to at some point in life. But it was a change that I just wanted for me. It was a change that I wanted to experience and feel for myself. It was something that I just really wanted to fully immerse myself into, and I think I had to. That's the other thing. I think it was a change that was too big to constantly record. It was something that I had to go through. It was something that I had to, as I say, immerse myself in wholeheartedly. And You know, at times it was difficult. At times it's been really difficult adjusting to the different cultures, different way of life, different customs, different climate. There's been a lot, not having at times what I felt was an identity, coming to a new place without any source of income, without a bank account, which was really weird, without the ability to get around places. It is still a learning curve, but it would have been that much more difficult had I been documenting it. So I came to the decision in January 2019 to finish Ramble On. And in January 2019, I sat in my new living room and I recorded the final episode of that show. More to the point, I told myself that was it, not just for the show, but for podcasting in general, for doing this. I just didn't want to do it anymore. And I was perfectly happy to stop doing it, actually. It was really quite nice not to have to worry about generating content or editing or fine-tuning stuff or sourcing audio. All the technical aspects. It was as much fun as I've had doing Ramble On, as really it did push me to go outside of my comfort zone and try new things. Sometimes it was a pain in the ass, I'll be honest. And having dropped it in 2019, in January, having walked away from it, I've not missed it. I haven't. It's actually been quite nice. And I was perfectly content not to do this ever again. I was perfectly happy at just walking away. But then this happened. This, what we're all currently going through, this weird, constantly shape-shifting landscape we find ourselves thrust in and just floating about in without a goddamn clue as to what's happening. This weird lava lamp-esque existence we're just currently working our way through. This biological tyrant they call COVID-19 or coronavirus or the Ronies or my personal favourite, a shit time for everyone. This happened. And that, in a nice but by no means neat way, brings me round to the point that I am eventually getting to. Why I decided to turn the microphone back on, why I decided to do this again, and what I want this to be, what I think this could be. So why am I doing this again? That is a good question. If I was content to walk away, why exactly am I doing this again? As I stated at the top of the show, like a lot of people within my demographic, let's call it, I have decided to podcast. And the reason being is like multi-dimensional, really. I'll be honest, on one hand, I do find this a form of therapy. For me, not only is it a great way to archive moments in my life in case I ever lose my memory, which, I'll be honest, has now overtaken death as my biggest fear. When I was younger, I was terrified of death. I mean, I'm kind of scared of it, but I'm a little bit more accepting of it. I know it's coming. Now I'm a little bit more concerned with losing my memory. So that was always one of the main reasons I did Ramble On, and I'll be honest, it's one of the reasons I'm doing this. And if you're going to document any stage in your life, this is probably going to be one of them that you would want to kind of get on wax, as it were. So yeah, as weird as it may sound to some people, and I realise not everyone will understand what I mean when I say this helps and it's somewhat therapeutic, it doesn't make it any less true. This is actually pretty good for me. It allows me to just be me, be openly me, unashamedly me, and get stuff out of my head, which, to be honest, is actually a relief, because although I am extremely lucky given my situation, my scenario, I am extremely blessed and privileged, and I never ever lose sight of that. I just want to clarify this in case anyone starts wagging their fingers or just being a dick about it. I completely understand, wholeheartedly appreciate and respect how fortunate I am in comparison to others. That is never, ever, ever out of my mind. But the last couple of weeks have actually been pretty testing. Not to sound like a whiny bitch, but they have been pretty testing. They've been pretty stressful, and I just have really kind of struggled a little bit in the last few weeks. The first few weeks it was fine, because I'm kind of built for just staying indoors and doing my own thing. It's pretty much been like a training regimen I've done for the last 3 decades. So I was kind of built for that. But I hit a point where I kind of just felt a bit mentally fatigued in the last couple of weeks. I found myself a bit lost, to be honest. A little bit flailing in a sense of just nothingness, staring out the window, staring at the carpet, feeling depressed, having no motivation, feeling like I have nothing to sort of sink my concentration into, nothing that will stick. So I needed something, and I figured that this would be a pretty good project to try and get rolling. I also thought it would be a pretty good excuse to look into stuff that I've been interested in for some time and kind of really do some research and learn things about, and actually expand my understanding of just everything and anything. But you see, Ramble On really did push me into situations and areas that I'd never even thought of, and it was really good for doing that. Obviously, I can't do that now outside. I physically can't throw myself into situations, but mentally, I can throw myself into so much. With the power of the internet at my fingertips, I can clickety-clack on the keyboard and learn so much about things that I've always been curious about, things I've never heard of, and just things in general, all aspects, subcultures, lifestyles, traditions, history, science. So much weird stuff, weird mysteries, unexplained events, cryptozoology. The list is endless, and at the minute I'm beginning to sort of formulate a list and to just kind of give you an example of some of the things that I want to look into and some of the things that are going to really sort of begin to shape the initial stages of Dimed Out. Here's some things off my list: American space apes, Norwegian black metal, primal scream therapy, Timothy Leary and his studies into psychedelics, Russian bear wrestling. I don't know why I put that on there, but it's on there. And speaking of wrestling, Exotico Lucha Libre, wrestling of a different kind from Mexico, e-boy / e-girl culture, transhumanism. So much is out there to explore and try and understand and get an essence of. And that's definitely one of the driving factors behind doing this. And just by sort of reeling off a few of those ideas, kind of gives you an idea of just what we could be looking at, what we could be learning. And of course, I'm open for suggestions, always open for suggestions. The second driving factor and core element to what I think Dimed Out is going to be, and what I really hope it is going to be, is communication. One of the main privileges, one of the main benefits of being in lockdown is the fact that people seem to put more emphasis on talking with each other, either the people that they live with or with people that they miss or don't really speak too much anymore, or in some cases haven't spoken to for years, which is kind of what I want for this, kind of an encapsulation of all of that. So I have a list of people that I would love to get on the show to talk about things that I know them for, but to talk about whatever, to have an open forum to talk about whatever it is they find interesting or whatever it is they want to delve into. So yeah, that's going to be a big part of what this is going to be, or what this could be, because right now it's all just potential. We're all just in that very early sort of primary shaping stage. You know, there's ideas, there's intentions, but you know, who knows where this is going to go. But that's the sort of the core 2 main ingredients that I want Dimed Out to have. The third is just stuff that I've done over the years, you know, over the last 8 to 9 years. I think it's been that, maybe even 10 now, I don't know. I've talked about music and film and other stuff. I've had various different vessels and vehicles and platforms. I've divvied up my interests, weirdly enough, and I don't know why I've done this, but for years I've had a different platform for a different interest. So at times I've had a film website, a music blog, different YouTube channels, and it's all just been very sporadic and spaced out. And finally, eventually, just recently, it occurred to me, why don't you just house everything you're interested in under one roof? And so that's what Dimed Out is going to be. It's going to be a little bit of film. It's going to be a little bit of music. We might get a bit of video games in there. We may get some writing stuff in there. We're going to get a knowledgeable spectrum of the world in all of its weird mysteries. I don't know why I'm slightly sounding like Jeff Goldblum at the minute, but that's how it's coming across in my head. Yes, the world, the mystery. Intrigue, inquiring minds, yes. Anyway, point being, everything that I've kind of dabbled with or tackled or written about or reviewed, all of that's getting thrown into the melting pot too. So there's going to be, as I say, episodes where we're going to be looking at, I know, maybe the Chupacabra, and then 1 week afterward we're going to be looking at a Wim Wenders film. Who knows? That's the joy of this. Who knows? I can tell you this for certain. The next episode, episode number 2, is going to be a look at the Lars von Trier film Dancer in the Dark, because I have never seen that film before, and I want to apply a feature that I used to do on one of my film sites called Keep or Delete, where I would watch a film for the first time, and then I would judge it through 5 different factors of judgment, and then come to the conclusion whether or not I want to keep that film forever, or if it should just be deleted from existence for eternity. So that's what's coming next. So if you're a fan of Lars von Trier, if you're a fan of film and cinema in general, then maybe that's going to be for you. And this is the exciting part about doing Dimed Out, is that the spectrum is going to be varied. It's going to be eclectic, which means not every episode is going to be for everyone. And yes, that's a risky strategy, I do admit, but it's a fun one. It's exciting, and if something isn't for you, that's fine. There may be something further down the line for you. Or perhaps you might want to jump into the spirit of the show and listen anyway, and see if it's something that you never knew you actually really liked. Because that may happen. You may have never seen a Lars von Trier film and think, hey, I've got this free time. Let's check it out. See if I like it. And if you do, if you love it, then who knows, you may just open up a new doorway that you didn't even know existed. Nobody take that, by the way, because that's good. We may actually keep that as some sort of tagline, or if we ever get into merch, we might use that. A doorway you never knew existed. But that's the idea, and that's the joy that I have behind doing it. And that's the reason, really, that I want to do this. As good as it is for me to do this, and as good as it is for me to talk and have something to work on, it's just really, really exciting to have something that is just so multidimensional and with such a varied spectrum. It feels really nice, actually, that I'm housing all of my interests and projects under one thing, finally. I'm actually, finally learning to work smarter, not harder. It took a long time, but I got there in the end. So yeah, that's the outlook, that's the outline, that's the hope and the potential with the show going forward. It's a little bit of my history for those of you who didn't know. It's a little bit of an introduction, and it's a little bit of an, as I say, an outline for what I would like to happen with this, what I can see this becoming. And hopefully you are just as encouraging and as supporting as you have been so far to this point, for which I want to say thank you for everyone that's shown interest and helped me go through names, which I suppose actually we should explain the name of the show. That would be a good way to end this, and a good way to clarify in case anyone's scratching their heads wondering what the hell does Dimed Out even mean. Essentially, it is a music term in specific reference to guitars being turned all the way up to 10, to where the decibel meter is just solid red, to where you can't get any louder. You just can't. You are just maxed out on volume. Now, a few years ago, I want to say it was for the 3rd album, Local Business, but I'm not entirely sure off the top of my head, a band, a fantastic band, I should say, called Titus Andronicus did a track called Dimed Out. They did a song called Dimed Out, which kind of plays with that idea. But for me, and this is just my interpretation of it, it's basically saying about how you should just fully be yourself, unapologetically be you, unashamedly project who it is that you are. So by keeping it dimed out, you're keeping it real. It's a phrase that has kind of become a mantra of sorts to me. It's something that has gathered more personal attachment over the years, and therefore it's stuck to this. It's also a little nod back to Ramble On, because at the end of that show, I would sign off with Keep It Dimed Out, which, to be honest, I'm probably just going to steal from myself and use again here. But Dimed Out wasn't the original name for this show. In fact, it was the last name offered for the show. I went through a grueling process that I inflicted upon myself for some reason in finding a name for this thing. It is just, it's ridiculous. The amount of time and energy I actually committed to this, just scratching through every possible opportunity, just scrabbling through my brain, trying to find something that was either witty or sounded cool or sounded smart or sounded just enticing. And I came up with a whole bunch of ideas, most of which I actually really regret. But just for the lols, I'm going to go through some of them with you now. My main focus was really on the idea of exploring ideas and weird stuff and mysteries and unearthing strange cases throughout time and just looking into the more bizarre side of the world. And I really sort of got tethered to that. I was just really stuck on that for the longest time, which explains the other two names in the last group of three. So Dimed Out was in the last group of three names that I came to. The other two were a higher state of consciousness, which for a long time I was really, really stuck on. I thought that sounded great. But then the more I thought about it, the more it kind of sounded really preachy, as if I'm allowing you to reach a higher state of consciousness, as if by listening to me and my nonsense, you are actually going to elevate yourself mentally or spiritually. And I just thought, no, I just sound like a pompous ass. So that went out. And then we had Through the Kaleidoscope, which, again, I was really, really attached to. But then I wasn't. If I was some kind of eccentric frou-frou old lady who was just setting up a market stall selling, I don't know, magic amulets or ceremonial artifacts, then yeah, sure, by all means, Through the Kaleidoscope's a great name. But I'm not, and that's not what this is. We don't have any amulets for sale, I'm afraid, and I don't think we ever will. So yeah, Through the Kaleidoscope was there for a while, and then the more I began to sort of think about that, the more I began to attach that sort of imagery, that very specific niche imagery, the less attached I became to it. Other ideas, just in case you're wondering, sonic binoculars, which I loved for like a hot 5 minutes, and then I just thought it sounded stupid. Through the Spyglass, a little bit pretentious, but nowhere near as pretentious as this, the Minerva Key. Yeah, I really don't know what the hell I was thinking there. It sounds... The whole idea was supposed to be like Minerva, owls, wisdom, keys, unlocking things. Yeah, it sounds terrible in retrospect. It sounds like a really bad sort of point-and-click adventure game that you would get on a PC, like circa 1992. Just really low-res graphics, terrible storyline. It's the Minerva Key. Other ideas? Celestial Spyglass, which is even worse than Through the Spyglass. The Art of Exploration, to which when I presented this with my wife, she asked me, "Who do you think you are? Jack Cousteau?" I'm not. And I'm not doing a podcast about Captain Cook or Columbus or any other explorer, so that's out the window. And then we had the pièce de la résistance of just god-awful names. The height of pretension, the high watermark of douchebaggery. And this is not a moment I'm proud of. But I came up with Beyond the Oculus. Yeah, it's all kinds of awful, and I'm really glad I didn't stick with that. Dimed Out is great as a title and as a show, which of course you're going to tell people, right? You're going to go tell all your friends exactly that. Of course you are. You know why? Because you are one smart cookie, and just between you and me, that quarantine haircut you gave yourself is fire. It is, as the kids say, lit. Yeah, that's enough of that. I'm not doing that anymore. That just feels filthy and wrong and weird. Yeah, just no more of that. Anyway, dimed out is perfectly fine. It's perfectly adequate. It's perfectly me. So why argue with that, right? Exactly. So yeah, anyway, this is it. This is the first episode. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've taken something from it. I hope you are excited for what's to come. As I said, not every episode is going to be for everyone, but if it's not something you're used to or something that you particularly would even think of trying, try it. Give it a go. Because, you know, we're all in this together to just throw out more cliches and, you know, you never know. It may just open a doorway that you never knew existed. Or some bollocks like that. Anyway, I have been Mel Foster. You've been wonderful for joining me. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, stay as happy as you can. It's not easy, but do your best. Because I want you to be happy. Until next time, true believers. Sorry, Stan, I had to steal that from you. Keep it dimed out.